how to get the big stakeholders, polluters, those responsible, to figure out.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to do as well. So how did you come up with this idea of activist investor? Tell me how, because you bought some 5,000, you have some 5,000 investors,
some
right?
5,000 retail
Yeah.
shareholders in Shell backing us up. But this all started as a journalist. I'm an engineer who turned journalist after seeing Inconvenient Truth of Al Gore.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, now I know the problem. Now I have to do something about it. So I became an energy and climate journalist, wrote down many times, wouldn't it be great if Shell, BP or another oil major would really change course and lead us into the energy future and stop climate change? I was not as influential as you are, so it didn't work.
And nothing we've done has worked either. To be honest, David Attenborough, as a journalist and as a storyteller, has had an impact about the plastics. Yeah. But when it comes to fossil fuels, you've taken a really interesting route.
Yeah, as a journalist, it didn't work. And then I thought, okay, how Shell will never listen to an unknown journalist in the Netherlands, and also not to the government. In the Netherlands, it's really the other way around. These companies are much more powerful than most governments. They won't listen to Greenpeace. The only entity they have to listen to are shareholders. Right. And all these shareholders are pension funds. They all talk about a green pension, making sure people retire in a decent world, well below 2 degrees, and also making sure the money is still there. So I thought, okay, I need to organize shareholders. So
to do what exactly?
To support the companies to commit to the Paris Climate Agreement.
So buy into the company and kind of influence them from within.
Yeah. Our tagline in the beginning was change the world by Shell. So people were encouraged to buy one share in Shell on our website and send an email to the CEO of Shell saying, hi Ben, I'm your newest shareholder. You have the power to change the world. You have 25 billion a year to spend. You have very intelligent people. You can change the world. That's why I'm a shareholder. You have my support. We also put a lot of emphasis on support.
So I just want to play some video, actually, because there's some video that's on the website that shows you at one of these shareholder meetings, and you're basically standing up and either confronting or discussing with Ben van Beurden, who's the CEO of Shell, and you really challenged him. What is it like to stand up to somebody like that, and how responsive have they been?
They have been very responsive after a few shareholders started supporting our resolution. Yeah. So in the beginning, I was just there on behalf of a few hundred shareholders, asking them when they would start investing in renewables. I said, please have some patience, come back every year on the shareholder meeting, and then we tell you when we are ready. But after a year, we had enough retail shareholders together to file a shareholder resolution, and that's when the investors and Shell really started paying attention, because then on the agenda of the shareholder meeting it says shareholders support the company to commit to the Paris Climate Agreement by setting targets, and that's the devil is in the detail, for all emissions. So not only for your own emissions, but also for the emissions of your customers. And that was the big debate with Shell in 2017. Shell said your resolution is unreasonable. We advise our shareholders to vote against because we don't know what our customers do with our products. I sometimes say, I think they burn it. What do you think? But they said, no, we cannot take responsibility. That's up to the customers to change behavior. And I think and I always say, apparently we have more trust in you than you have in yourself. You are so powerful. You can change customers. You can change governments, regulations. So you really have to do it. You need the support. So they advise shareholders to vote against. Normally 99% votes with management. It's normally a North Korean outcome. This time, 6% of the shareholders were brave enough, because you needed guts in the Netherlands to vote against the board of the most powerful company, were brave enough to vote for our resolution, saying this is just a fair ask, this is what everybody should do. And Shell responded to that by taking responsibility for Scope 3. So they are the only one who says we take responsibility and we're going to help our customers by driving down emissions.
Okay, so fast forward, you're here in London precisely because they've responded in at least some way, and you were involved in a debate or a conference today with top Shell management.
Yeah, exactly. We organized a symposium today in London for investors, media. Question was, how can investors support the oil industry to commit to Paris or to stop climate change, actually? And Shell thinks this debate is important enough to debate with us in public. We have still a disagreement on what Paris alignment is. Shell says...
You're talking about aligning with the Paris Climate Accord.
Yeah. And that's 1.5 to 2 degrees, and that translates into emission reductions of 70 and preferably 100% in 2050. That's a big ask for an oil company. I'm fully aware of that. So they're not ready to set that target.
So let's talk about it. It all sounds great. However, you have 5,088 shareholders who own 193,000 shares. That's $753,000 shares.
Yeah.
Shell has 8.3 billion shares.
Yeah.
So you have a tiny percentage. It's a drop in the ocean for a company like Shell. And big oil companies, including Shell, BP, all those are still working against climate solutions.
Exactly.
According to what we're going to show you, this influence map, which is by a UK non-profit think tank.
Yeah.
5 publicly listed oil majors, as I said, ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, BP, Total, now spend roughly $195 million per year on branding campaigns suggesting they support climate action.
Yeah.
But
that's a wordplay. They support the Paris Climate Agreement, but nobody has committed to the Paris Climate Agreement.
Right.
And that's the big debate investors have now with Shell. And the entire oil industry, they say you can make or break this Paris deal. You are responsible for more than half of the emissions.
So you're saying that the entire oil industry will make or break the Paris climate targets?
Yeah. So we need them to change. If we let them continue business as usual, they will go bankrupt.
However, business as usual, according to this same graph, says that these very same companies spend nearly $200 million a year lobbying to delay, control, or block policies to tackle climate change. And in 2019, this year, their spending on oil and gas extraction will increase to $115 billion. Just 3% of that directed at low-carbon projects. You know, a lot of them find that there is a lot of independent agencies and UN and others say that there's just a whole load of greenwashing going on.
Exactly. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. None of the big oil companies is prepared to commit to Paris. I fully understand if I place myself in the heads of a CEO. These are people who have been successful in oil and gas for the last 30, 40 years, extremely successful, because otherwise they wouldn't be the CEO. And now the investors are telling them, you need to do something else. So in the beginning, I hoped for a kind of epiphany of an oil major CEO having a discussion with one of his kids, having a sleepless night, and then the next day he would announce a total turnaround. That's not going to happen. He needs investors to support him, to compel him, and if needed, to force him. And the good news, investors are doing that for moral reasons, but also for very financial reasons. These investors see that their complete portfolio is in danger. So, and oil and gas is just a small part of it, but if climate change gets out of hand, world economy will stall, and all their assets will lose.
Yeah, you're basically saying, if you don't act, the world economy is going to screw you, so you might as well act. Yeah. And yet they're not doing enough investment into renewables right now. Now, you said you've expanded the reach of your activist investor to BP and other companies, right? So I spoke to the former CEO of BP just recently, John Brown, and he's talking about basically there needs to be a change in public policy, government policy, which involves making these companies pay for their emissions and their fossil extraction. Listen to what he said.
Number one, we have the technologies to solve this problem. Number two, we can deploy them. It needs a change in public policy. We absolutely, in order to get the temperature into a range that is acceptable in some way, we have to charge for carbon. We must have a carbon tax. Then we can deploy the technologies, and we will still use hydrocarbons because we haven't got the means whereby to replace them yet, but they will be cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. That's what we've got to do.
I mean, there are two questions. One,
he's fully right, and he should use his lobby power not to slow down climate action from government, to speed it up. He can offer customers other products. So these companies are so powerful, they can really do it. And I keep on saying to them, also on the shareholder meeting, I got the same kind of response from the then CEO, Bob Dudley. Scope 3 is not my problem, that's up to customers. I said, apparently we, the shareholders, have more trust in you than you have in yourself. You can really do this if you are willing.
But as
because
you know,
the technology is there, you just heard him say.
Yeah, exactly. And some people say a carbon tax is the only way to go in terms of public policy. But as you know, some of the very young, our young people who realize that their future is really at stake, think that even that's too much of a compromise, that you really shouldn't actually even be investing in these companies, despite the good that you're trying to do and the influence you're trying to have, that there should be no more fossil fuel production. This is the view of Greta Thunberg, who's mobilized millions and millions of people. And as we know, even now in Australia and the US, they keep building coal plants. Yeah. This is what Greta says.
We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity. And if solutions within this system are so impossible to find, then maybe we should change the system itself.
So what do you say to her?
She's absolutely right. They should stop exploring for more oil and gas today, make as much profit as possible with the oil and gas they already have tapped into, and invest everything in renewables. That is the outcome of our resolution. Our resolution is a kind of Trojan horse. It sounds very vague. Align yourself with the Paris Climate Agreement, but the consequences are immense, because as soon as an oil company really aligns with Paris, they have to invest completely different. So they have to, in the case of Shell, 25 billion has not to go to more oil and gas, but to renewables. And I wish that we could leave the oil industry aside and say, okay, you are like in every disruptive innovation, because renewables are disruptive. It's getting cheaper and cheaper, oil's getting more and more expensive. So eventually these dinosaurs will go bankrupt. Like Kodak went bankrupt not because they didn't have the technology, but because they didn't dare to invest in new business.
And innovate.
The only thing is, this time we cannot afford it. Yeah. We cannot afford these oil majors to go on like this. They will go bankrupt in like 20 years. I'll be here sitting here talking to you and saying, I told you so. I don't want to do that.
So right now you have 5,000 odd investors, and you need a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Important about this 5,000 is to mention we have 5,000 members, but we have 6% of the shareholders behind us, with BP 8.4%, with Equinor 12%.
That's
and
big.
For a board that's used to get 99 whatever percent.
The North Korea model, as you said.
That's a lot.
That's good. That's good.
And in Shell this worked. 6% was enough for Shell to make this big step. And BP reacted exactly the same as Shell. Scope 3, that's not our problem. They literally said that.
Okay.
8% says it is your problem and you have to solve it.
Really interesting. Mark van Baal, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot.